Listen to part of a lecture in an art class.
Now, here is a question I'd like to ask all of you, before we start our class today. Which art medium is better for artists? Oil paint or acrylic paint?
I'd say acrylic paint, because many beginners in painting are told to use that.
Okay, that may be partly true. But it's not always good advice. When choosing between oil and acrylic paints, it is important to first understand their differences. And that is what I will mainly discuss today in our lecture. One of the main differences between oil paints and acrylic paints is their drying time. Most acrylic paints will dry within an hour, so they are a boon to painters who have a high production rate, as their work can be completed quickly, whereas using oil paint would have taken days for the layers of paint to dry. Unlike acrylic paint, which dries by its water content evaporating, oil paint dries by oxidation. Depending upon the humidity and temperature of the setting, oil paints will stay wet for days, and even for weeks. However, I wouldn't always recommend acrylic paints for beginners. Can anyone guess why?
Because they dry fast, I guess. They would be very frustrating for painters like me, who are slow.
That's correct. Well, I wouldn't say it is always the case, but many novice painters would take a longer time to complete artwork. And fast-drying acrylics will have disadvantages in mixing paint, which is another difference between oils and acrylics. Since the drying time influences acrylics, you can understand why it is more difficult to mix acrylics than oils. Because oil paints are so malleable, artists can make smoothly blended tones and produce subtle color variations, so that the transitions between the paint look seamless, which makes oil paints work very well in paintings of realistic style. On the other hand, acrylics may not work well for artists whose styles use the special manipulative properties of oil paints, as acrylics will already begin to dry. Now, let me tell you about the third difference between the two types of paints, which is longevity. One of the qualities that make oil paintings so desirable to many artists is their ability to resist the test of time. Oil paintings have survived over hundreds of years, which we can still see in major galleries of classic art masterpieces. However, one of the principal defects of oil paints is discoloration with age, if not properly taken care of. The oil of the painting can darken over time, but this defect can be reduced by using quality materials and applying a coating of final varnish.
Then, should all artists of oil painting varnish their work? Or, are there certain conditions for varnishing to work well?
That is a good question. But the answer depends on the artist and the purpose of the artwork. Although varnishing can serve the purpose of preservation, the artist solely needs to decide whether taking the extra step is necessary or not. Despite the benefits varnishing has, such as giving protection against UV rays, dirt, and atmospheric pressure, and even deepening the effect of colors, there are reasons why artists do not varnish their work. It is time-consuming and difficult, and some think it doesn't add any aesthetic value to the painting, and it can alter the artwork permanently if not applied at the right time. They may ask, why go through a lengthy extra procedure and change the artwork negatively, or even ruin it?
Question 6. In the lecture, the professor listed the characteristics of oil paint and acrylic paint. Indicate in the table below which of the following features of oil paint and acrylic paint are mentioned in the lecture. Click in the correct box for each sentence.